Okay, so before we get into talking about selection, I've got a question I want to ask you. So what is it that the Dubai Police Force and bricklayers have in common? Well, what they have in common are robots. Look, robots are coming to replace both of their jobs. So by 2030, 30% of the police force in Dubai will be robots. And these robots, through facial recognition, can identify suspects and chase them down until a real person turns up. And they can speak 6 languages, so they can direct tourists around Dubai. You can even pay your speeding fine all via robot. And in Australia, a company called Fast Bricks has robotics that can lay 1,000 bricks per hour, whereas the average brickie lays about 300 to 600 a day. So, look, our world is rapidly changing. Times are changing. The way we think about work and the way people do work is going to be completely different in the years to come. And you have to keep up in every aspect of your business, which includes your selection system. If you aren't using 21st century selection techniques, your business is going to suffer. Look, there's an adage in HR, hire for skill, fire for attitude. Well, I believe you need to tip that saying on its head. Instead, you need to hire for attitude and train for skill. Now, I'm sure you've spent hours agonising over writing people's job descriptions, then rifling through hundreds of random resumes, and you've spent hours interviewing to only still have that seed of doubt, that question in your mind that goes, is this person the right person? And I know you're not the only person to ever said, if I'd only known then what I know now about this person, I wouldn't have hired them. You see, research by Hudson found that 56% of hiring people, that is HR people and hiring managers, believe that their track record of making good hires was about 56%. In other words, 44% of the people that they were hiring, they didn't think were quite a good fit for their organisation. So what the research is saying is basically your chance of hiring the right person for your role is about as good as a flip of the coin. And here's the thing, those bad hires cost you, because for every bad egg who receives an offer letter and who inevitably drains your team of time and money, a good candidate who was a better job match was potentially turned away. And you and I both know bad hires are draining. Bad hires cost a lot of time and energy as you're managing their performance, and the people in your team are fussing and fuming about it. These bad hires cause about 80% of your turnover, and it costs you more than 5 times their salary to replace, depending on the level of the job. Actually, research differs on that. It's anywhere between 5 times, and sometimes some pieces of research say up to 80%. So take your pick, it's expensive either way. What we want to do is stop that. We want you to get to a place where, instead of facing a draining of time and energy, that you've got great hires, that when you bring people on board, you're confident that they are going to be a perfect fit for the role, an ideal fit for the culture in your organisation. And so what we need to do is make sure that you're using the 4 Bs of high performance during your selection process. So the 4 Bs are, well, firstly, you want people believing in what your organisation does. You want them believing in the role that they'll be doing and the impact that they will have on the mission of the organisation. Research by Towers and Watson, which was with 10 million employees across 500 global organisations, well, in that research, they identified the ultimate differentiators of excellence. And they say that purpose, in other words, believing in what the organisation is doing, and the employee having a high buy-in to the brand, the mission and the strategy are crucial. In other words, that first B, believing. Next, you want them to feel that they belong. Every person in the world has a sense of wanting to be a part of community. And because we spend so many hours at work, people really, to perform at their best, really need to feel that they're trusted and that they can trust their leadership, that they belong in this organisation, that it is a place they really want to be and that they can thrive. Next, people need to know how to behave. What are the behaviours that they need to succeed in this organisation and generally in life in general? People excel when they're in an environment where it is the norm to be at your best, to have the mindset for excellence and have clear expectations around what it takes to thrive and succeed both personally and professionally. And finally, bottom line. What is it that they do to contribute to the sustainability of your business, both fiscally and through its impact in the broader community? People want to work for a best performing company, one where they are the market leaders. So your selection process needs to hit all these 4 Bs, and at the same time, when you onboard your people, you continue to grow those 4 Bs through your systems and leadership. Because here's the thing. As a recruiter, somebody who's bringing people into your organisation, it's one of the single most important things you can do. Because you know what? We're messing with people's lives. We spend about 90,000 hours at work in our lifetime. And so a significant part of who we are and how we live our lives is informed through the job or the role we're in. So if you bring somebody on who's not a good fit for their role or not a good fit for your organisation, you're messing with their life. And that's a big responsibility because unhappy people go home and create unhappy families. You want to make sure that as you're hiring people that you're really absolutely as confident as you can be that this person can thrive in both the role and the company. So when we talk about these selection systems, there's a bunch of activities you need to do. But firstly, you need to start by benchmarking the job because that's the basic foundation for ensuring that when you hire somebody, you're matching them with what the job requires. So when we conduct a benchmark process, we use subject matter experts. We identify what a superior performer would do when performing in this role. Not just what the current person's doing. We view it through the lens of if someone was thriving in the job, if they were a superior performer, how would that look? And then, using a systematic process, we use the brain's trust within that group to create a profile of the capabilities, behaviours and motivations a superior performer will use to thrive in this position. Beneath the video, you can find a link to a sample benchmark report that would be produced once your subject matter experts have provided their input into our online system. And once completed, your benchmark becomes a key point of reference for comparing candidates. And the closer the candidate is to the benchmark, the more likely the chance of a good hire. And obviously the farther removed, the less likely. Using our candidate match system, your candidates get to complete an online questionnaire where we match their results against your job benchmark. You're quickly able to see which candidate has the closest match to the driving forces, behaviours and competencies you've identified are needed in this role. Now, in a traditional job analysis, you tend to stop at capabilities, and often people stop just there, but sometimes they might stretch to behaviours. But that only tells a part of the story of what it takes to succeed in a job. Understanding what motivates someone to turn up to work each day is crucial to success. It's the cornerstone of believing that they are in the right job because the work they're doing makes their heart sing. It's about working out and working on what matters to them. Get that right and you'll get people who use boundless amounts of discretionary effort. They'll be working because they want to, not because they have to. So let's take an example. Bill Gates and Bono have each significantly contributed to charities. However, the way Bill Gates runs a charity is quite different from Bono. In fact, Bill's transformed how charities work through the work he's done at the Gates Foundation. Their focus is on ensuring that what they do makes a real difference in a measurable way. In other words, his driving force, his real motivation, is about ensuring that there is a high ROI for the efforts they are making. In the model that we use when we're benchmarking jobs, this is the driving force or the motivator called resourceful. In other words, he's someone who's driven by a need to maximise the return on investment. And this is vital because even if Bill had found himself in an organisation who didn't focus on the bottom line, but if he was in a role that did focus on the bottom line, he could still thrive in that company. But if he was in a position where the return on investment of his efforts didn't matter, he'd become demotivated and would probably leave. So you need to have a good understanding of what inspires a person to get out of bed with a spring in their step and whether the role you have on offer will light those buttons up for them. Because what most organisations do is they think about the skills and the capabilities and a little bit perhaps around behaviours, but they don't dig deep into motivation and what drives a person. There's no way Bill Gates could have been involved with charities for years on end as Bono did, because while Bono has done great things, in the early years he didn't seem to be as focused on the bottom line of their interventions as Bill is. So does that make either of them right or wrong? No, goodness not. It's just that Bill Gates would have withered in an organisation run by Bono, even though their aims were both the same, unless he was able to work in an area where he could deliver the results that matter. Because for Bill, that driving force, that motivation for a higher return on investment is a critical component to who he is and how he goes about his work. And understanding that about a candidate and what's needed in the job is critical to matching the right person to the role. In our model, there are 12 forces or motivators. As a leader and a hiring manager, it is critical that you match the motivators of the role to the motivators or driving forces, those two terms you can use interchangeably, of the individual you're putting in the role. And although benchmarking isn't designed to replace human judgment altogether, it does make what is a notoriously frustrating, time-consuming and expensive task considerably easier and smarter. And smarter hiring means better talent, and better talent means better organisations. And I just want to underscore this. The benchmark isn't just a recruitment tool, it's the foundation of effective talent management. It provides a platform for training, coaching and succession planning, leadership development and performance management. Armed with an accurate benchmark for each role, executives now have a clear picture of what competencies need to be targeted, coached and developed in their team. Below the video is a link to download a sample TriMetrix DNA coaching report that you could use with your new hire to help them drive their development agenda. Once we benchmark the job and we've got a great position description, we move into the actual recruitment process. Now, I'm going to bunch the next few steps together because now that we're externally facing, what becomes critical is the story that you tell about your organisation. Because rest assured, whether you do a lousy job or a great job, you are telling a story of what it is like to work in your firm. And the people who interact with you will tell others that story. They can become ambassadors for your business or critics. So what do you want them to become? What story do you tell about your company during your selection processes? It's essential that believing and belonging are at the forefront of your selection process because that's where the magic lays. So how do you do that? Well, you ensure that your values and the outcomes you say you want to achieve as an organisation are reflected in every piece of your selection system. Because let's underscore this, you are starting to onboard your prospective new team member right from the ad. So here's an example. If one of your core values is to make moments that matter, then how can you make that show up in your selection process? Well, your ad needs to entice people to dream big, to feel that this job is speaking to their heart. You need to ensure that at every touch point, your candidates feel that they are experiencing a shift in themselves, regardless of whether they get a job offer or not. So let me take you through a scenario you're probably all too familiar with. You front up for an interview and say, "Hi, I'm Shelley Holmes and I'm here to interview with John Jones." Now, what response do you expect from the receptionist? Mostly, we expect the reception person to say, "Hi, take a seat and I'll let them know you're here." Then they ignore you for the next 20 minutes or so. But if you put the first two B's of high performance, believing and belonging, and your values front and centre in your selection process, here's how that exchange might sound. As soon as you said, "Hi, I'm Shelley Holmes," the receptionist said, "Oh, Shelley, John told me you're coming today for an interview. So excited that you're thinking about joining our team. Just give me a moment. I'll let John know you're here, and then I'll come over and you and I can have a quick chat while you're waiting. You can ask me any questions you want about what it's like to work here and why it's a special and unique place to work." Now, can you imagine if you'd written a really great ad that's already got the person inspired by your company, and then he or she was greeted this way? How strong becomes that sense of believing and belonging for that person? They're going to be thinking, "Oh my goodness, I want to work in this organisation. The people here are so welcoming. They seem great and they're doing excellent work." And that's what you want. You want to be deliberate about how you select and onboard people into your team. because to get your receptionist responding in this way doesn't happen by chance. It happens through deliberate design. And here's another piece of advice. Generally, most people's early interactions with your company is the interview. I don't recommend you do this. Instead, bring your candidates together in groups and hold an information session. The information session is about you revealing to the candidates what it is like to work in your company. You want to weave the story about your company's mission, about how what they will do will make a difference, what their role is all about, and your expectations. This is all about getting the believing part of our 4Bs model front and centre, getting them chomping at the bit to take a bite at what you have on offer. And why an information session rather than just do it at the front of an interview? Well, it enables your senior leaders to get in front of the potential new hires without necessarily being involved in the selection process, and it tells your story consistently. And it gives candidates the chance to say, you know what, after hearing this, I'm not sure that this is a right opportunity for me. You see, a candidate deselecting that early in the process, it's a great thing, because you need to ensure that what you share during the information session reveals enough about the role and your team to enable people to make informed decisions. As well, if you get that content right, your candidate has fewer questions about the role and the organisation during the rest of the selection process. That means through the other selection processes, you've got the right candidates, the candidates who are chomping at the bit to be a part of your team, and you can focus on extracting from them as many details as you can about how they'll perform in the role. So after the information session, you get down to the nitty-gritty of selection, the interview and assessment stages. Now, most organisations just hold interviews. Unfortunately, interviews aren't a good way to recruit people, because here's the thing. If you only undertake interviews, you're going to run into trouble. The research is unequivocal. Most people fudge their resumes or fudge their answers in interviews. In fact, some of the most senior people in the world have been caught out lying on their resumes after the recruitment process. For example, Albert Dunlap, who was the CEO of Sunbeam, failed to declare 2 previous positions from his resume, positions that had ended poorly because of his poor performance. He was fired from Sunbeam in 1998, accused of accounting fraud. And what about Andrew Flanagan, who was the GM for Myer for one day? He said on his resume that he worked for Inditex, who owned the network of Zara stores. He'd actually never worked for them. But it's not just CEOs who fake it. If you do a quick search on YouTube for behaviour-based interviewing, you'll find plenty of examples of people who lie through their interview. Look, here's just one example. I made up a story and I use the same one each time. Put on a big fake-ass smile and tell them what they want to hear. And this is what people are saying in public forums. So we know that if you only use an interview, you're setting yourself up for not getting the best candidate. What you want to do is to train your team to execute assessment centres competently. In the assessment centre, you should bring candidates in groups of 4 to 6. And during the assessment centre, we get the candidates to undertake activities like group discussions, role plays, inbox exercises, presentations, maybe some testing, maybe even some social events. Your assessment centre activities enable you to gather information that can be really difficult to get in an interview. It allows you to look at the characteristics that you've identified in the benchmark and to see people performing them in real time. It's really hard to fake in a role play competence at managing an underperforming team member. It's far easier to fake a story about how you've handled an underperformer when answering an interview question. And look, even the social events, when you witness how they interact during morning tea or lunch, can tell you volumes about an individual. As an example, one time we were running an assessment centre and one of our assessors came up to a candidate and said, "I'm ready for you now." And the candidate turned to her and said, "I'm meant to have a 15-minute break between the last activity and this interview. There's still 2 minutes to go. Can you come back in 2 minutes?" We were like, whoa. We couldn't believe it. How rigid was this person that they would say, I need my extra 2 minutes of break before I come and have my interview with you. You know, it's small things like that, but it can tell you volumes about what you can expect from somebody in the future. Look, the benefits of assessment centres are enormous because they help you see people's behaviours real time. You can better predict how they're going to perform in their job. It's also part of your onboarding process. You're saying to people, look, this is what we expect you to do on the job. For example, calming a ruffled customer, planning and leading up a group discussion, or doing a presentation. Also, candidates report that once they've been through an assessment centre, they think it's been a professional and rewarding experience. I mean, to be fair, it's a little bit daunting, but they also feel that they've had a fair go, that you've had a really good hard look at them, and that you and they are both able to assess whether or not this is going to be a good fit. Look, it certainly takes a bit of time for your team members to be involved in an assessment centre selection process. However, there's a couple of significant side benefits to this investment in time. Firstly, they become more committed to the new hire's success. This is because they've been a big part of bringing the candidate on board to the team. Secondly, as they're assessing candidates in role plays, group discussions or presentations, etc., it's reminding them of the skill sets, the behaviours and the mindsets that you want them to use in their own roles. So assessment centres have this real double whammy impact. You get to gather a lot more information about your potential new team member, and it reinforces with your current team members the behaviours you want them to use. Because if they're assessing a candidate in a role play about something and they aren't doing so in their daily work, well, the cognitive dissonance can be a great prompt to them stepping up and developing their skill set in that area. So how can we help you? Well, there's a whole bunch of ways we could support you. It all depends on your budget and the degree to which you believe hiring people into your team is an integral part of your business success. So here's some of the ideas. We can run a job benchmarking session and provide you with a benchmarking report. We can write and or help you update job descriptions so they better reflect your benchmark. We can help you design your selection materials, whether that's your interview guides, in-basket, role play or group discussion activities. We can help you rewrite your ads for the role so that it reflects your company's brand and sells the jobs to your candidates. We recently did this for a client who was struggling to get the right candidates in for their roles. Once we transformed their ads, they had a huge, far bigger pool of candidates that were chomping at the bit to come and join their organisation, and really high quality people too. We can help you screen your candidates and provide a shortlist against that benchmark criteria. We can train your team in how to interview using behavioural-based and strength-based interviewing techniques. We can train your team in how to run assessment centres and assess candidates. And look, generally in the first 1 or 2 assessment centres, we like to come along and help mentor your assessors through the assessment process. Just fine-tuning their skills. I mean, training works, but we found people need a bit more coaching during the first 1 or 2 assessment centres until they become quite proficient. And once you've made a hiring decision, we can use the candidate's profile to debrief with both the candidate and their leader on how to get the best from them. So if you feel that your selection process is really only that flip of a coin and you're only getting 50% of the time the right people in the right role, well, it's time to change that. It'll be great for you to get the tools that will raise your probability of getting the right person in the job so that they can thrive and your organisation thrives. So this is Shelley saying goodbye for now until we come together again to help you become a rock star in your industry.